Hi, how you going? My name's Adrian. I go by the artist name Drexler. I'm in my home studio in London. So thank you very much for having me for this interview. I'm looking forward to answering some of your questions. So the first one was how have I perceived this unusual time? So I guess like everyone, it's been very bizarre. It's been really up and down, bit like a roller coaster. I think 6 months ago it was like this great moment that you could kind of finally have time and no more excuses to write that masterpiece. And then maybe 2 months later you're like, oh, I still haven't done that masterpiece. And then now I'm in a really good headspace again, and have started kind of creating and writing more music now. But at the end of the day, I'm just really thankful that my family and I were safe. No one's been really ill. We have our jobs and things like that, because I know in general there's a lot of tension everywhere. There's a lot of people who have lost work or are struggling. So I think it's a difficult time for everyone, but personally, I'm just thankful, all things considered, that I'm healthy and my family are healthy. So my first musical memory would be my dad playing Enya's track Sail Away around the house. Very bizarre tune. I still can't really listen to it. But then from the age of 5, I started learning piano and violin. I think every kind of Chinese child, or parent I should say, makes their child learn the piano and the violin. I'm not sure why, but I was just another Chinese kid learning music. But it wasn't until I was about 13, I started teaching myself the guitar, and I started writing songs, and usually about heartbreak, and I think it was that moment that I decided that I was gonna, I wanted to write music. I didn't know I was gonna be a, composer or a film TV composer, but I knew I loved writing music, and I would, I'd go to the toilet where there was this kind of reverb, and I'd play these songs, and I'd sing about heartbreak, and I'd just sing them over and over and over again, and there was that kind of cathartic experience, that release, that I think I found a way to express myself in ways that I couldn't before. So I think from that moment when I started writing songs was when I decided that I wanted to write music, and I've always kind of I've stayed on that path and tried to make that happen since. Okay, so the process with Handles, my debut album, is probably quite unusual, because when I started writing the pieces, I didn't really have an end goal. I didn't know where they would end up. I knew I wanted to kind of create an artist project, but I didn't have clear guidelines or a style or anything like that. And so apart from doing my Drexler work, I work as a composer for film and TV, and adverts. And so when I wasn't as busy, or when I was feeling inspired, I'd start kind of just writing music for myself. And that's kind of how the Drexler project came about. And it was a really long process. I think I was writing the pieces for over 2 years. But in terms of the composition process, so it would always kind of start on the piano, whether a real upright or just in Logic on the computer, and then I would kind of orchestrate and arrange other instruments centered around the piano. For my next project, I'm thinking of doing vocal work. So my process with that is just kind of doing a lot of listening, doing kind of research, because I've never written for voice before, so it's different. With Handles, I knew what I was doing in terms of writing for piano and strings, because those are my instruments. But for this next project, I'm looking to do a vocal piece, so that's like studying composers' works like Berio, Stockhausen, Caroline Shaw's Petita for 8 Voices is a massive influence. And then just kind of reading papers and articles about vocal timbres and textures and techniques. I've been learning about Inuit singing, Mongolian throat singing, and then I want to study Aboriginal Indigenous singing, because I'm from Australia. So yeah, just kind of, I guess, equipping myself with all these weapons and skills first before I kind of dive into the actual notes. So I guess my first kind of introduction to modern classical music was probably through film scores, wanting to be a film composer, and then kind of coming across artists like Johan Johansson or, Niels Fram's score for Victoria. I just absolutely love that score. But also, I suppose, before that, maybe like a band like Sigur Rós was a band that was doing instrumental music, even though there were vocals, and then hearing those pieces synced into films, maybe. Also, John Hopkins, I think I would have come across him and kind of appreciated his kind of piano pieces as well as the electronic music that he was making. And why did I choose to follow this genre? I guess it wasn't really a choice. It just feels like more of a natural progression. Like I said, I write music for film and TV, so this kind of is my style of music, is in that world, I suppose. And it was just really combining all my experiences as a violinist, playing in folk rock bands, listening to modern music, contemporary music, and then those worlds coming together. Okay, so I think I think every individual musician is gonna be very different with their approach, and I think that's the right way. As I studied composition at university, and I think it's important to have an understanding of harmony and orchestration or musical history. But I think what is more important is, and I'm still kind of on this journey, is like discovering your own voice and your own story, because that's how you can come up with something that's authentic and unique. And that's what people want. People want something different. They want something new. They want something original. So I think more important than learning all the rules on how to write music is to just kind of really discover what you are as an artist and what you have to say. Okay, so I don't feel equipped to give advice to a pianist, because I'm not a virtuosic pianist at all. In fact, I hated practicing. When I was growing up, I hated the piano. I had this teacher who made me play the same 4 pieces for the whole year in preparation for an exam. And I hated it so much that I would arrive to her house for my lesson. I'd sit outside the front for 5 minutes just to waste time. It was terrible. It was costing my parents money. So I feel a bit ashamed to say that. But I guess the story, the message, I should say, is to just maybe play music that you love. And for me, it's kind of using the piano as a tool to write music, and to tinker with melodies and improvise. And I just, this is a pretty new piano that I've got, and I just love being in that, immersing myself in that kind of acoustic space and just hearing the vibrations of the piano. And so yeah, I guess that's my advice, is just to play music that you love or write music that you love. With modern classical music gaining popularity, I think it's been really useful, having artists like Niels Fram or Oliver Arnolds who are able to kind of break into the mainstream. And it's so cool to see them writing this type of music, but also filling out music venues or playing at music festivals. I think that's really groundbreaking, and it's definitely made people understand what modern classical music is a bit better, I think. And in that sense, it's also meant that there's more platforms like yourselves and radio stations that are playing modern classical music. So in that sense, it's really helped my release, that there's a space for people to listen to it and people know where to go to try and find that type of music, and new emerging acts as well. So I think that's great. And modern classical music, I think, is unique in the sense that people can put it on in the background just to create like a calming, relaxing atmosphere, or if they want to, they can listen actively and focusing on the details and appreciate, all the composition. So in that sense, it's quite special, and I think having that space has allowed my music to kind of reach new audiences. I'd probably say I lean towards the latter, or at least I like to think that I do. I think the idea of the music kind of taking you on a journey rather than you kind of predicting what the music's going to be is a lot more exciting. It opens the possibilities for more experimentation. So yeah, I think I would like to think that the vision and the sound finds me. But contrary to that, I think it's also important, like I said, with this vocal project I'm doing, is to kind of have these structures in some way, some boundaries. Maybe it's the instrumentation, or maybe it's the themes that are important, that get you started. So I think I like the music to kind of have a space to explore, but at the same time, have some certain rules. Otherwise, you kind of don't know where to start, and you can just you can waste hours just not knowing which direction you should be going to. So yeah, I think some artists that I've been really enjoying, that I always keep an eye out for, Sigur Rós, Colin Stetson, Niels Frahm, Nicholas Breitel. I think what's unique about those composers is that they all have a voice. They all have something unique and authentic, and when their music comes on, they can tell they have a certain sound to them, and they have a certain authenticity to them, which I love, and I think is really important. And that's something that I'm trying to discover myself. I'm trying to discover what my sound is, and I think those composers doing that is something that I aspire to do. But I think equally, I'm influenced by how musicians and how composers think about music, not necessarily what their music sounds like. So I was listening to a talk with Chris Bowers, who wrote the Green Book. He scored the Green Book, I should say, and the show Now They See Us. And I just am influenced by how other people think, what books they're reading, how they manage relationships within a film project, how they start writing, what their process is, so I think it's also equally important about understanding or appreciating other people's mindset, and then taking all those useful tips into your own process. So I think equally, of course I love those acts like I mentioned before, but also I think it's really influential, or it has for me been influential anyway, to just kind of learn about how other composers think about their music, and how they approach their craft. The best advice I've received is, I've already mentioned that, is finding your own voice. So when I first started writing music, especially I was doing a lot of pitching on ads, so I'd approach people saying, I'm a really versatile composer, and I think that was not really useful. I think it's better for you to be someone that is special at something specific, and that is your voice. I think finding your voice is the most important thing, and I wish I kind of had discovered that 10 years ago, because before then I was just trying to learn to write in all styles and just trying to survive and get work. Whereas I think if I went back in time, I would have released this album 10 years ago. But I think apart from that, because I've already mentioned that a lot of times, is just how necessary it is for musicians and composers to just put yourself out there and meet people, and networking, I guess, and because this industry that we work in is all based on relationships. I'd say 95% of the work I get is from someone that I've met, a friend or a friend of a friend who has recommended me, and you know, those relationships are so valuable, and they help you grow as an artist, and they also, you know, feed you and, you know, provide you with income. So I think it's really, really important to put yourself out there. And, you know, the worst thing that can happen is that, you know, you end up, you know, getting rejected, or, you know, you maybe go to a networking thing and are very awkward. But I think, yeah, it's just really important to be nice, be kind to people, be friendly, and be someone that people want to work with. Okay, it is a great question, because I think the collaboration aspect of Handles, my record, was probably the most memorable for me. So like I said, I started writing these pieces, and really I didn't like, you know, it's hard to kind of think that your music sounds good, you know, especially when you're working in the computer and like you know, with sample instruments. And, you know, when I asked my friends Sonia and Ali Sung, so Sonia Shabek, who plays violin, and Alistair Sung, who plays cello, you know, they're friends that I've known for over a decade, from back in Australia. And they came over to my place in London, and we just recorded the strings, and, you know, all of a sudden, like, the music just came to life, and that's when I kind of started believing in the project myself. So that was just an incredible thing to have these superb musicians, you know, play your music. I think that's something that you can't take for granted, and, you know, that's aspect of collaboration is what makes it fun. It's what makes it worthwhile. And I think, if anything that I take away from this album, is those memories of, you know, playing with my friends and recording them, and, you know, just having them play on the record was just incredible. You can listen to my music. You can find it on Bandcamp. So that's bandcamp.com/Drexler-music. And then also, you know, anywhere you get your music on the internet, I think you'll find it. And then also I'm releasing the record on vinyl, which I'm very excited about, and that should be out hopefully end of November. So yeah, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Have a great day. Cheers.